Now Little King posts this paperwork, right? And here's the thing I don't like about this paperwork. This is an actual case. For those of us that know, we know this is an actual case. Now let me read this paperwork.
Nobody saw this coming. Just weeks after boldly stepping into the ring with hip-hop's most ruthless troll, King Harris is suddenly changing his tone, and insiders are saying the pressure behind the scenes was way bigger than anyone imagined. What really happened after those shots were fired at 50 Cent? Sources close to the situation claim the moment King went public, the internet exploded, but that wasn't the real problem. The real storm was happening behind closed doors. Phone calls, warnings, industry veterans stepping in, and whispers that messing with 50 isn't just rap beef, it's career suicide. Fans started noticing the shift. The energy wasn't the same. The confidence? Different. Then came the subtle backtracking. The misunderstood comments. The sudden respect talk. Was it maturity or was it survival? 50 Cent has built a reputation for turning rivals into cautionary tales. Just ask anyone who crossed him publicly. So when the King stepped up, people thought it was bold.
I want to say something about my mama. Your mama dead. Your mama dead. Go dig up. Go dig up. Post a picture of your mama. She dead. Pay respect.
Now, it's looking like a lesson learned the hard way. But here's the twist. Some insiders are claiming this wasn't just about ego. There may have been conversations involving family, legacy, and long-term moves that forced King to rethink everything. Did King Harris really regret coming for 50 Cent? Or did he simply realize he was playing chess with a grandmaster? This story just took a wild turn, and trust me, you're not ready for what's next. You're not ready for what's next, because what happened after that moment wasn't just internet gossip, it was a shift in energy. A quiet storm building behind smiles, reposts, and carefully chosen words. When King Harris first came to 50 Cent, it looked like another young voice trying to carve out his face. Bold, fearless, maybe even reckless. The timeline was on fire. Clips were circulating. Fans were picking sides. Some called it confidence. Others called it clout chasing. But one thing was clear, the King had just stepped into dangerous territory. 50 Cent isn't just a rapper. He's a strategist, a master of public pressure, a man who has built an entire second career off dismantling people with memes, receipts, and calculated silence. And that silence? That's what made it worse. Because instead of an immediate explosion, there was a pause. And in hip-hop, a pause from 50 Cent is never random. Days passed. The jokes online got louder. The commentary channels dissected every facial expression King made, every caption, every emoji. Then, suddenly, the tone shifted. King's energy wasn't as aggressive. The edge softened. The statements became layered with respect and misunderstanding. Fans noticed immediately. Why is he backtracking? Pressure got to him? OG stepped in? Behind the scenes, whispers started spreading. Industry calls were allegedly made. Quiet advice from people who've seen careers rise and fall over pride. Because here's the reality, challenging someone like 50 publicly isn't just about winning a roast battle. It's about longevity, branding, relationships. And when your last name carries weight, the stakes double. Being the son of a major figure in hip-hop means every move is magnified. Every mistake becomes a headline. There were talks about legacy, about timing, about choosing battles wisely. And allegedly, those conversations weren't gentle. Some insiders claim King didn't expect the backlash to escalate the way it did. He thought it was just online noise. But what he didn't account for was how quickly narratives can turn. One moment you're bold. Next, you're trending for the wrong reasons. And then came the turning point. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. A shift in posture during a live session. A different tone in interviews. Words like OG and respect started slipping into the conversation. That wasn't random. That was strategy. Or survival. Meanwhile, 50 Cent remained almost silent, which somehow made the situation heavier. Because when 50 decides to respond, he doesn't just clap back. He builds moments. He waits. He calculates impact. The internet began speculating. Was 50 gathering receipts? Was he preparing something bigger? Or did someone make a call that stopped it before it went nuclear? There are rumors, unconfirmed, but persistent, that mutual contacts stepped in. People who didn't want unnecessary smoke. People who understand that hip-hop politics can spill into real-life consequences fast. And let's be honest, in this era, reputation is currency. Sponsors watch everything. Labels watch everything. One wrong move can affect opportunities you don't even see yet. King Harris might be young, but he's not unaware. The game today isn't just about bars. It's about optics. And once the narrative started framing him as someone who bit off more than he could chew, damage control became necessary. But here's where it gets deeper. Some say this wasn't a regret. It was a realization. There's a difference. Regret implies weakness. Realization implies growth. And if King understood that he was stepping into a chess match instead of a Twitter spat, adjusting his approach wasn't losing, it was learning. Still, critics weren't forgiving. They labeled it backpedaling. Said he folded. Said the pressure cracked him. Memes started flying. And in hip-hop culture, perception can become reality overnight. The bigger question is, did 50 Cent even need to respond? Sometimes dominance is proven through restraint. By letting the moment play out. By allowing your reputation to speak for you. And 50's reputation? It's built on making examples out of people. That shadow alone is powerful enough to shift someone's energy. But here's the twist nobody expected. Sources close to the situation claim there may have been a private understanding reached. Not friendship. Not an alliance. Just clarity. An unspoken agreement that certain lines don't need to be crossed publicly. If that's true, then what we witnessed wasn't a retreat. It was a recalibration. King Harris is at a crossroads in his career. Establishing identity separate from legacy. Trying to prove he's not just a name attached to greatness, but a voice of his own. That kind of pressure can push anyone to make bold moves. Sometimes too bold. And going at 50? That's like stepping into a lion's den to prove you're fearless. But fearlessness without strategy can turn into recklessness. The tension is still hanging in the air. The internet hasn't forgotten. The clips are still circulating. And 50 Cent is still watching. The real question isn't whether King regrets it. The real question is what happens next if this silence breaks. Because if 50 decides to respond publicly, this could go from subtle tension to full-blown spectacle overnight. And in a game where pride, legacy, and image collide, the next move could define everything. Because if 50 decides to respond publicly, this could go from subtle tension to full-blown spectacle overnight. And in a game where pride, legacy, and image collide, the next move could define everything. And that's exactly why the silence felt louder than any diss track. The timeline stayed restless. Every time 50 Cent posted anything, even something completely unrelated, the comments flooded with one question. Is this about King? Fans were dissecting captions like detectives. A simple emoji suddenly meant warning shot. A throwback clip became subliminal. Meanwhile, King Harris kept moving, but carefully. Appearances were made. Music snippets teased. Smiles shone. But the fire from before? It was controlled now. Measured. Almost calculated. Some insiders claim there was a serious sit-down conversation behind the scenes. Not with 50 directly, but with figures who understand how this industry really works. OGs who've seen what public ego battles can do. People who reminded King that virality fades, but reputation sticks. And then another layer entered the story, business. Because hip-hop in 2026 isn't just bars and bravado. It's partnerships, endorsements, streaming algorithms. The wrong controversy at the wrong time can stall momentum before it even starts. King isn't just building a name, he's building a brand. And brands don't survive long wars unless they're prepared for the fallout. On the other side, 50's power doesn't just come from punchlines. It comes from influence. From the fact that when he posts something, millions see it in seconds. When he decides to turn someone into a trending topic, it's rarely accidental. That's why people started asking a different question. What if 50 never planned to respond? What if the goal wasn't to destroy, but to observe? There's a strategy in letting someone reveal their level of preparation, in watching how they handle pressure, in seeing whether they double down or pivot. And if that was the case, King's shift in tone may have told 50 everything he needed to know. But here's where things get even more intense. Rumors began circulating that certain industry gatekeepers weren't happy with how fast the situation escalated publicly. Not because of loyalty, but because unnecessary beef can disrupt larger moves happening quietly behind the scenes. Collaborations, tours, media placements. And if there's one thing this industry protects above all else, it's money. The narrative online tried to paint it as simple: young rapper folds under pressure. But reality is rarely that simple. Growth often looks like retreat from the outside. Strategy often looks like fear to people who don't see the full board. Still, the culture doesn't always reward subtlety. It rewards dominance. And dominance in hip-hop is loud. Memes kept circulating. Reaction channels milked every frame. Some said King learned a lesson. Others said he dodged a bullet. A few even claimed this entire situation boosted his visibility more than any single he's dropped. And that's the paradox. In trying to test a giant, he may have accidentally leveled up his own name recognition. But there's a difference between attention and respect. Respect in this game is earned over time, through consistency, resilience, and knowing when to speak versus when to move silently. As weeks passed, something interesting happened. The energy cooled. The headlines slowed. The tension dissolved into speculation instead of confrontation. And that might have been the smartest outcome possible. Because imagine if it went the other way. Imagine if 50 had responded with a calculated, viral takedown. Screenshots. Old clips. Public mockery amplified to millions. That kind of spotlight can be brutal, especially for someone still carving their lane. By the time the smoke cleared, King's messaging became more focused on music and independence. Subtle confidence replaced aggressive challenges. It wasn't surrender. It was repositioned. But the story isn't over. Because in hip-hop, silence can be temporary. Alliances shift. Pride resurfaces. And unresolved tension sometimes resurfaces when least expected. There's also another angle people aren't talking about enough: generational transition. Young artists today operate differently. Social media amplifies everything instantly. The old rules of private disagreements rarely apply anymore. One live session can spark a week of headlines. One tweet can ignite a war. King's generation grew up online. 50 mastered the online battlefield later and turned it into a weapon. That clash of styles alone makes this situation fascinating. It's not just personal. It's symbolic. Old guard versus new energy. And here's the part that keeps insiders whispering: what if this wasn't the final chapter, but the opening move? What if both sides understood that public tension generates engagement? That controversy feeds algorithms? That even silence can build suspense? We can't confirm that. But in an era where perception shapes reality, nothing is ever purely accidental. As of now, there's no explosive diss track. No viral meltdown. No public humiliation campaign. Just a story that almost ignited and then cooled before turning into wildfire. Some call that luck. Others call it wisdom. King Harris walked to the edge of a storm and stepped back just in time. Whether that step back was driven by fear, advice, maturity, or strategy depends on who you ask. But one thing is undeniable. He now understands the weight of challenging someone like 50 Cent. And 50? He understands that his silence alone can shift narratives. The board is still set. The pieces are still in play. The only question left is whether either side decides to move again, or if this becomes one of those hip-hop what-if moments people talk about years later. For now, the lesson hangs in the air. In this industry, every action echoes louder than you think. And sometimes, the smartest move isn't the loudest one. And sometimes, the smartest move isn't the loudest one. But silence doesn't mean the story disappears. It just means the next chapter is being written somewhere nobody can see. As the noise faded, both sides kept building, just in different ways. King Harris leaned deeper into his own lane. More focused studio sessions. More controlled messaging. Less reactive energy. It was almost like watching someone recalibrate in real time. Meanwhile, 50 Cent continued doing what he's always done, expanding empire moves, making business headlines, and reminding everyone why his name carries weight far beyond rap beef. And that contrast? That's where the real lesson lives. This was never just about words exchanged online. It was about power dynamics. Experience versus ambition. Strategy versus impulse. For a young artist trying to establish independence, stepping to a legend can feel necessary. It can feel like proving you belong in the arena. But arenas have rules, and veterans know them better than anyone. As weeks turned into months, something subtle became clear. The king didn't crumble. He adjusted. That distinction matters. Because collapsing under pressure looks chaotic. Adjusting looks intentional. Fans who initially mocked him began noticing growth. Interviews became sharper. Responses are more composed. The energy shifted from confrontation to confidence. Not loud confidence, grounded confidence. And maybe that was the evolution. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about this industry. Moments like this either define you negatively or refine you quietly. King Harris stood at a fork in the road. Double down and risk escalation, or pivot and build. He chose the second path. And whether that was advice from mentors, conversations at home, or personal reflection, it showed maturity that many didn't expect. On the other side, 50 didn't need to prove anything. His legacy is cemented. From music dominance to business dominance, his position isn't fragile. That's what makes his silence powerful. When someone at that level doesn't react, it signals control. But let's not romanticize it too much. There was tension. Real tension. Pride was involved. Ego was involved. And in hip-hop culture, ego is currency. The temptation to respond, to escalate, to go viral, it's always there. The fact that it didn't spiral tells you something important happened behind the curtain. Maybe it was guidance. Maybe it was calculated restraint. Maybe it was simply understanding that not every challenge needs to turn into a war. And that's the final twist in this saga. Sometimes the battle you don't fight becomes your strongest move. King Harris gained something unexpected from this moment. Awareness. Awareness of how fast narratives can flip. Awareness of how heavy certain names are. Awareness that legacy isn't just inherited, it's protected through choices. He walked up to the edge of a fire and felt the heat. Instead of jumping in, he stepped back and studied it. That's not weakness. That's survival instinct. For 50 Cent, this moment reinforced his aura without him lifting a finger. His reputation did the talking. His history did the talking. Sometimes dominance is proven by the fact that people reconsider after challenging you. And now, the story becomes bigger than both of them. It becomes a reminder to every young artist watching. In an era driven by instant reactions, controversy can feel like momentum. But longevity requires something else entirely: patience, strategy, and emotional control. King's next moves will matter more than the moment that sparked this drama. If the music hits, if the brand builds, if the growth continues, this will be remembered not as a misstep, but as a turning point. And if he ever steps into a similar situation again, he'll do it differently. More prepared. More calculated. As for 50, he'll keep watching. Because veterans understand that today's challenger could become tomorrow's collaborator. Hip-hop history is filled with former rivals who later aligned once respect was established. Nothing is permanent in this game except reputation. And reputations are shaped by moments exactly like this. In the end, there was no explosive diss track. No viral humiliation campaign. No public destruction. Just tension, reflection, and recalibration. Sometimes the loudest battles are the ones that almost happened. And maybe that's why the story hit so hard. It showed the thin line between boldness and recklessness. Between ambition and ego. Between noise and power. King Harris stepped into the spotlight looking fearless. He stepped out of this chapter looking wiser. 50 Cent never stepped in and somehow still controlled the room. That's chess. And in chess, the player who thinks 3 moves ahead doesn't always need to make the first move at all. The storm that almost erupted became a lesson instead. A quiet transformation disguised as drama. And for those paying attention, that transformation might be more valuable than any viral moment could ever be. So now the question is, what do you think really happened here? Did King Harris really regret stepping to 50 Cent? Or was this all part of a bigger strategy that we're only seeing from the outside? Was it pressure? Was it growth? Or was it chess at a level most people don't understand? Drop your honest opinion in the comments right now, no filters. Team King or Team 50? If you made it this far, you already know this wasn't just about rap beef. This was about legacy, power, and knowing when to speak and when to move in silence. And trust me, stories like this don't end here. The hip-hop game is always shifting, and the next move could happen when we least expect it. So make sure you like this video if you respect smart moves over loud ones. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next explosive breakdown. And turn on your notifications because when this story updates, and it will, you'll want to be the first to know. We break down the drama, the strategy, and the truth behind the headlines. Stay locked in. Stay sharp. Because in this game, every move matters.